And you noted a bit of a dichotomy about how he felt about his parents and simultaneously seeking their approval. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, and this is very characteristic of disrupted attachment. On the one hand, Mr. Orton was very saddened, angered at times, confused, embarrassed by how his parents treated him, but at the same time, he very desperately wanted to please them and to get them to love him and accept him and validate him. So it's these kind of two competing things that he had going on.
How did Mr. Orton attempt to cope with that internal conflict over the years?
Well, I would say in a couple of different ways. Number one, he definitely sort of psychologically disengaged or emotionally disengaged. In a sense, he ignored some of the behavior of his parents that would have indicated they were not ever going to accept him or validate him or consistently care about him. And he chose to believe that if he just followed the rules a little bit more or was a little bit more compliant or kept his head down a little bit longer, that would somehow bring about some kind of change and his parents would start consistently accepting him.
But eventually his attempts at coping were overwhelmed. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And do you believe that there was an event or some events that led to that overwhelm of his coping abilities?
Yes.
Can you describe that event or those events?
Yeah, so on October 13th, I believe it was, his mother had sent him an email while he was at school. And the email essentially said, when you turn 18, you're out of the house, we're done with you, plan on being gone.
And Ethan would have turned 18 just the following March of 2022, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
What was different about that email versus the previous interactions of rejection that Mr. Orton had suffered?
So I think with the many other incidents in which his parents had rejected him or belittled him or dismissed him, he was able to rationalize those things and either convince himself or tell himself, well, they're drunk, or they were angry, or maybe I did do something wrong, or again, if I just kind of shape up a little bit, act a little bit better, it'll be okay. But this particular email was very definitive, and I don't think he was able to rationalize it or explain it away like he had in the past.
There were a few events after this email occurred that you believe were part of this reaction. I believe one of those was regarding his father's reaction to this email. Can you tell us more about that?
Correct. So I'll try to keep this concise, but basically the father found out about the email, I believe, through the school counselor, and the father initially talked with Ethan and said effectively, I'm sorry that your mom did that. I'm going to pick you up from school. I'm going to take you to work with me until I'm done with work so that we can go home together and you're not alone with mom after school. And so Ethan felt like his dad was supporting him, rescuing him, if you will. But then after they got home, mom and dad started talking, and they ultimately started fighting and kind of came back to this pattern they'd had in the past of telling Ethan, hey, we're getting divorced, it's all your fault, you've messed it all up. And so that was really key, I believe, because Ethan thought maybe dad's going to support me, and then it switched very quickly where dad aligned with mom. They both, again, started blaming him, for them going to get divorced and were attacking him.
And how did that change of his father's position affect Ethan, in your opinion?
Well, I think it was a reiteration that he had nobody. Mom had said you're out, and now both dad and mom were on the same page saying, you've messed everything up, you've ruined our marriage. So he had nobody, no hope.
And did he still have a connection to his lifeline of his Discord friends?
He did for a while that evening. There was a bunch of back and forth and fighting about the phone. But then ultimately, mom and dad broke the phone and said, it's broken, you're done.
And what did that breaking of that lifeline, how did that affect Mr. Orton?
I think it was just another piece of him realizing that he didn't have anybody. There was no way for him to reach out. He had no connections. This was kind of the end of it.